This is Vince Russo, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Hey there, this is Lance Hoyt of TNA Wrestling, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
Welcome, guys, to the Wrestling Epicenter on the Blaze, 12:60 a.m. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. That room back there, man, it just stunk.
Oh, yeah, not just metaphorically, literally, it stunk in there. We are having a little bit of technical difficulties here tonight. Francine will not be joining us. We just spoke with her. Having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're going to be getting things rolling right now. Thank you for sticking with us. What do you want to start out with? You want to start out with WWE Monday Night Raw?
Yeah, let's take care of that right now. The first match was Kurt Angle defeating Ric Flair, even though we thought he was taken out of action for, the brutal injuries that Triple H gave him, but he's back.
All right, allow me to go on a little rant here, guys, all right? Now, let's take one step back. 2 weeks ago was Survivor Series. 2 weeks ago, 14 days was Survivor Series, and in that match between Triple H and Ric Flair, Triple H hit Ric Flair with a sledgehammer. That supposedly was such a dastardly deed that it caused a feud between Triple H and the Big Show under the assumption that Ric Flair was taken out of action for a time. The next week on Raw, Edge mentions that instead of laying in a hospital bed in Minnesota, which is what the storyline would tell you Ric Flair is doing, Ric Flair is actually in North Carolina with road rage beating up a random driver. And then the next week, Ric Flair comes out, not a scratch on him, and has a match. Good going, WWE booking. Good going.
Yeah, oh man, it's so quite believable he was taken out for 2 weeks, and when in fact, just a little road rage took him out.
Oh man, I don't know what to tell you. It's just a little weird. I mean, the storyline should keep him off TV for at least a month, and a month is even short. I mean, I remember back in the olden days, Tito Santana suffered a supposed knee injury, and he was gone for 6 months. Ric Flair's off for 2 weeks, and that's a long break?
Well, hold on a second there, James. Did Tito Santana have possession of the Intercontinental title? It's a real problem. They tried to bring prominence back to the belt by putting it on Randy Orton and then Shelton Benjamin. And is it fair to say that Ric Flair, because he held that belt, is it fair to say that he should be kept off television? What do you do with the title?
I say it's very fair. Just when they appoint a new GM, why not just say, hey, we're taking the title back away from Rick. We're going to hold some sort of tournament outside for the New Year's Revolution thing, and then just do it that way. That's just an easy plot hole way to get out of that sort of situation instead of bringing him back 2 weeks later unscathed and unscratched.
Well, this goes back to the point that I made just about 2 months ago when Ric Flair won that belt. Ric Flair won it under the guise that it's a title that he hasn't held before, and as they're saying, the only singles title in the heavyweight division that he's never held in the United States. Understood. I didn't really approve of it, but I understood the reasoning behind it. Then, the next night he has a rematch with Carlito, the guy he beats, and he goes over again. Technically, or logically, wouldn't you think, okay, you got to hold the belt for a day, now give it back to a young guy who can actually use the belt?
And that makes plenty of sense to me. I mean, you got your belt, you got your title run, even if it was that short. I mean, look at a guy like Kane. He had a one-day world title run, and then that was it for him at the top tier. He would continue fighting for the belt, but he was never really a threat. Flair, you got your run. We're going to put it back on Carlito. Speaking of Carlito, he was in the second match of the night, and who did he beat? But it seems like the only man he can beat over the last 6 months, Shelton Benjamin.
You think Shelton Benjamin can get some sort of more attitude to beat Carlito? I mean, it's like the Ducks beating the Coyotes all the time. It just always constantly happens. Why?
I don't get it, man. I don't get it. This new attitude is supposed to make him more aggressive, but he has a worse record now than when he was just this fluffy little baby face.
I mean, he spat on his face?
He spat an apple on his face? That's really attitude.
Yeah.
I got another attitude for you. I'm going to tag myself in and miss a high-cross body. That's my attitude.
I'm going to tag myself in, miss a high crossbody, fail miserably, and look stupid. And then the next week, I will lose what is likely my 8th straight match to Carlito. This is worse than the time period where Sergeant Slaughter came back once a year and lost every year.
Yeah.
From like 92 on, he couldn't win a match. He won one, maybe on heat.
He was the Gilbert.
The Gilbert.
He was Gilbert
It's
before
not who's
Gilbert.
next, it's who's first.
Or who's going to be afterwards for Sergeant Slaughter.
Question for you guys: did Goldberg and Gilbert ever wrestle?
No, they did not.
No.
I was always hoping that I had 2 dream matches if I could ever do a card. It would be Goldberg against Gilbert and the Ultimate Warrior against the Renegade.
Ha! The Ultimate Warrior and the that might be the worst match imaginable.
I will say this, though. The idea of Gilbert actually wrestling another match sounds pretty entertaining, actually. I mean...
Yeah, maybe they should bring him back. I mean, Goldberg's run in WWE was not exactly the greatest thing ever, so...
Bring back the bald guy with the black tights! Yes!
Stone Cold Steve Austin?
No.
He walked out. Oh, that bald guy with black tights. I got confused.
The other bald guy with black tights, man. Did they just give him red tights? Or I don't know, just...
The funny thing was, originally Goldberg was supposed to be WCW's version of Steve Austin. He was supposed to have the same exact gimmick, but it just didn't work. And I honestly think the entire Goldberg phenomenon was completely an accident by WCW. I think they just fell into it. I think they were thinking, this guy looks impressive, let's not beat him. And then somebody showed up with a sign that said 30-0, and they're like, oh, so that's his gimmick.
Oh, good idea, I guess. It worked for them, though. At least it was entertaining seeing him beat the crap out of Hulk Hogan in, 20 seconds? Something like that?
He beat everybody in
the
20
Georgia
seconds.
Dome.
Yeah.
Third match of the night, another qualifying match in this contest of the Elimination Chamber at New Year's Revolution. Shawn Michaels defeats the Big Show by disqualification. Oh, that Triple H, he's a crafty one. He hits Shawn Michaels with a chair to get the Big Show disqualified. Bad Triple H.
Naughty Triple H setting up another little feud between the Big Show and him, which would be actually, I'm actually looking forward to this feud.
Why?
Why? It just, one, hasn't been done in quite a while,
Right.
and 2, it just seems like a nice break for the Big Show from him doing all these tag matches, even though him and Kane it's one of the few bright spots on the Raw program as of late.
Oh, I'd agree with that completely. I think that these guys could have a good feud. I do remember that they feuded a while back. I think it could be interesting to see these guys go at it again, but once again, the premise of the feud, what are they going to do when they make these promo videos? The promo video would have been, if they were logically booking, well, you took Ric Flair out of action and I'm mad at you. Well, now what are they going to do?
I don't know, just maybe Big Show can start picking up on Stephanie again. Or for the first time. He is the Big Show.
If I have to see Stephanie McMahon Helmsley, creatively known on the internet as Nipple H,
I love that. That's good.
if I have to see her one more time in a storyline with Triple H in it, I am going to shoot someone.
Ben, question for you. Were you watching last week?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Did you see when they met each other and they stared at each other for a good 10 seconds before they went to break?
They're like, can we just go now, or...
That's why I'm glad I don't subscribe to WWE Unlimited. It probably would have been the extended 45-second stare scene.
Well, I got a feeling that was kind of teasing that they could put them back together again, and I sure as hell hope not. After seeing her spank Triple H at the Raw 10th anniversary, I just don't want to see them together ever again.
I don't want to see something they do in the privacy of their own bedroom on national TV. The next match we had was Chris Masters defeating the Big V, Viscera. I mean, when your qualifying match has Viscera in it...
Viscera never really... Let's talk about Viscera's career. Here is a man who came into the WWE, then the WWF, as Mabel, a member of Men on a Mission.
Hell yeah.
A fan-favorite tag team with Mo and their manager, Oscar. Rapping and clapping and happening and having a phenomenal time. They were doing good stuff. So then, they never win. They maybe have won once at a house show, the tag team titles. Everyone always wanted them to win. They never did. Great rivalry with the Quebecers. If by great, I mean watching a 500-pound man slovenly move around the ring like Jabba the Hutt. You have a great guy like that come in, and what happens? They turn on him, and then they make Mabel King of the Ring, the pay-per-view which ignited the fury of ECW at that time.
Absolutely. That's the funny thing that they did mention in the Rise and Fall of ECW that I never thought Vince would allow. Because that was a point in time when WWE booking was just so absurd and stupid that ECW, a show that was on at 3 in the morning in its #1 market, seemed so original that fans would actually set their VCRs just to see it at 2 in the morning. That just shows you that enough people attending WWE events will chant ECW at a WWF event. That shows you how big ECW really was.
Yeah, you'll never see that though with the Jeff Jarrett. I mean TNA organization.
The Jeff Jarrett
Jarrett
show.
organization?
The Jeff Jarrett show, basically.
We'll
is what
get
I'd
to that
call it.
one a little bit later.
Up next was the women's title match, which I'm sure, well, not a title match, but a women's match, which I'm sure was Brendan's favorite match of the night.
No comment. Though it looked very nice though. If you put it on mute, kind of like Friends back in the day, just put it on mute and look at Jennifer Aniston the entire time.
Yeah, she was
I
beautiful.
Same thing. Look at Mickey James the entire time. And I'm like, hey, that's
Mickey
nice.
James beats Victoria.
Big win for her,
Gets
yes.
the contendership for Trish Stratus, who will, at New Year's Revolution, almost to the day, have held the world title, or the women's world title, for 1 year. Very impressive mark for somebody who has had her share of challengers, but it seems like they're trying to make Mickey James this big face character by having that emotional story.
I got to be honest with you, she kind of strikes me as a freaky stalker. Shouldn't she be wouldn't that be the heel though?
I think they were trying to play it off with that whole, my grandfather, he took me to my grandpappy, I think is what she called him.
Oh my God.
And he took me to he died soon thereafter, and she started doing the cry, but she did it all in the matter of 30 seconds, that it was like listening to either Chip or Dale of the Rescue Rangers do it. And you're supposed to mean this is sad. It's not sad. Trish Stratus plays a great heel and a great face, but I don't even think she can carry this off against the stalker Mickey James.
Here's what we need to do. Clone Trish Stratus into like 10 different times over. That way, hey, they might actually have a women's division that's worth watching. The next match of this was Kane defeating Triple H.
Yes. That was a shocking ending, and it was kind of cool and kind of made sense to see the Big Show interfere in this match and come out and double chokeslam Triple H, because it just made sense since he screwed him out of his shot at the Elimination Chamber. He just returned the favor.
And of course, igniting the future feud that I hope will continue to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But what about Kane's push that I keep on hearing about, that he's actually having a movie coming out later on? Do you think that will tie into his push, or will it be just kind of like another thing that WWE does?
He's the most flexible guy on the WWE roster day in and day out. Here's a guy who can headline and still get, some good buy rates if he's got a good enough opponent, a guy like Kurt Angle or Triple H, who he's fought, most often. And he can be the first match on the card. He can be mid-card. He could fight for any title at any time. They did a spectacular job, and you got to think, he was introduced in October of 97.
Right.
It is now December of 05. This is a silly gimmick that has lasted 8 years.
Well,
Brother of
look
Kane.
Look at The Undertaker. Look at The Undertaker, though. I saw him come out. I literally was watching this pay-per-view at home. I saw the gimmick come out. I was 9. I thought, this is lame. And here it is 15 years later, and he's still around. And for some reason, that character, as blown up, as cartoonish as it is one of the coolest things ever in wrestling.
It's all about execution, just like serving your food. It's just how it looks. I mean, Undertaker putting people in a body bag and tombstoning him off the turnbuckle. That was always like a proud moment I always loved seeing, waiting for every single time. Is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? And then when Kane came out, it was just sort of like, wow, that's probably the only thing I can think of that could actually take on The Undertaker, was his flesh and blood.
Final match of the evening, the main event. This is what was to get the crowd in Boston geared up.
And by the way, this was the only match on the card that the crowd actually seemed to care about.
That's really unfortunate.
On paper?
It was the first ever, and hopefully last, You Can't See Me match. And
I never understood that phrase anyway. Sorry to cut you off. I never understood the phrase, you can't see me anyway. So this at least made it make sense to me, but wow.
I don't want to see it. How about that?
John Cena beats Daivari with what they're now calling, I think Joey Styles, great off the top of his head move, calling it the STFU. I'm sure that was fed to him via either Vince McMahon or the powers that be backstage. However, great move on his part, because that actually gives a name to what could quite possibly be one of the worst finishers for a world champion ever.
Well, they're trying to make Cena seem like he can actually do a technical wrestling ability, have technical wrestling ability, and I think that's supposed to be to go with his feud with Kurt Angle, plus the popularity of Bret Hart. By the way, #1 on the Billboard DVD charts is Bret the Hitman Hart. So I mean, there you go. You got some technical wrestling going around right now, and I think they're trying to lump Cena into that.
And this contest, I was much more compelled in 1991 when I saw Jake the Snake Roberts and Rick the Model Martel fight in what is the basic blindfold match. However, I'd just like to say, after watching John Cena, that the 12-year-olds in the audience must have been loving the fact that only about 3 years after its biggest spike in its ability to draw fans in and get ratings for kids, that Blue's Clues is back on the air in WWE form. Is he? What corner's he in? Yes! Yay! There! Go there! Come on, Sean! You beat the crap out of that guy!
Go Daviri! Oh no, Daviri, bad man. I mean, that's what.
Oh my God.
What are we promoting?
What are we
here?
doing here?
You know, if this work on his in-ring persona, just his in-ring ability, then maybe we might get an actual interesting match on Raw. Besides blindfold match, go get him, Daviri.
I'll tell you what though, that was Ultimate Psychology by Jake Roberts, and it goes to show you that a guy like Jake Roberts can take a match that, in essence, is pretty stupid, and just make it brilliant. That's probably the easiest match to be in. Was Jake Roberts versus Rick the Model Martel from, I believe it was WrestleMania 7.
It was WrestleMania 7.
Phenomenal. I mean, that was just total psychology. Point, and the crowd goes wild.
And it was entertaining. It was incredibly entertaining.
I didn't think it was entertaining last night, though, or 2 nights ago.
No, of course not. It kind of seems sad, and it really buried a guy like Daivari as if he needed to be buried any further, apparently. But it really buried him. Biggest thing on the night, though, was not a contest. It was the search for a new Raw general manager. And the list, you know, it goes on and on. Of course, Vince came out at the beginning, got the crowd real riled up when he brought up Theo Epstein. Being a Yankee fan, yeah, go Vince. Rile those Boston fans. But Vince comes up with names like, he had people in his office. Trevor Murdoch throws his name into the hat. Yeah, that's going to happen. Candice Michelle, I don't think so.
Funny.
She can't even do a good promo unless she has to take off her clothes and do that GoDaddy.com.
And if I can say this real
that's
quick.
not bad. That's not a bad thing.
I sat across a room from Candice Michelle. I actually sat exactly next to her just last March. She looks far better on TV than she ever did in person. I was not impressed with her in person.
Ooh, that's rough.
Dusty Rhodes, maybe?
Dusty Rhodes will be the new general manager of Raw. It seems only right. Of the guys they interviewed, the only other person who really had, compelling, other than Mick Foley, they've done that a number of times, had to have been Chris Nowinski.
Absolutely. That would have been an interesting thing to see. It's good to see that Chris Nowinski is still employed to the company.
It really is a guy who hasn't been able to wrestle. But he had such skills. And you look at how that Tough Enough thing really broke down for them. Matt Morgan's not with the company anymore. He didn't win Tough Enough. But let's look at who won Tough Enough. Linda Miles, Jackie Gata, Maven, Nydia, all gone. The only Tough Enough person, Daniel Puder, is gone already.
Well, the story behind that was Vince McMahon was walking around backstage at a SmackDown taping, and he saw Daniel Puder, and he turned and looked at, what the hell is his name? Johnny Ace, and he said, "He's still employed to the company?" Next day he got released.
That's
just cruel.
That's very cruel, and you got to look at it. The only people employed under the Tough Enough umbrella anymore are the Tough Enough 3 guys. Johnny Nitro, a.k.a. John Hennigan, who's having a really fantastic run right now as one of the tag team champions. SmackDown actually having a tag team division, unlike Raw. And the other guy, of course, Matt Capitelli, who is yet to get his big push. He's still training, but a lot of people see in him what they saw in Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy.
Right.
And that high-flying, insane guy.
From what I understand, Paul Heyman is doing great things with that kid over in Ohio Valley Wrestling. Maybe if they kind of used him in the same vein that Paul Heyman is using him, they can make him a big star in WWE.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Buck Bagwell, and guess what? You listen to The Blaze on 1260 AM. Listen, or I'll show you why I'm buff and I'm the stuff. Check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please welcome a man making his second appearance on this show, first time in over a year, the one and only Vince Russo, who has a phenomenal book out called Forgiven. Vince, how you doing?
Oh boy, been up to a lot. Right now, what's taking up most of my time is my book just reached the publisher's hands today. So the book is done. They have it. It should be being put into distribution in the next couple of weeks. And basically, we're putting together a big wrestling show out here in Rome, Georgia, that's going to take place on December 16th. It's called The Great Commission, and I've been spending a lot of my time, more or less putting that show together right now.
Well, I just got an email from ECW Press, who I believe are the distributors of your book, and they were saying that it will be out in stores in early December. What can we expect from this book? I believe the last time we had you on, you were telling us that it was a bit of your memoirs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the book is really interesting because, quite frankly, I don't know of any other book that's kind of ever been done this way. But when I originally wrote the book, I was at a real low point in my life. A real dark point in my life. And, basically I wrote the book, and the book was very dark, and the book was very, very hateful. And basically what happened was, 2 years ago I became a Christian and I became saved. And, being that I was a different person and a different man, my tone, had just, everything about me had just changed. So basically what I did was I kind of took the old words to the book I originally wrote, and then I have now a running commentary as a Christian throughout the book where it more or less is the new Vince commenting on the old Vince, and where I was at that point in my life and what was going on. And it's a real interesting spin, and it's just something I put a lot of work into. I poured my heart into it, and I'm real proud of it. I think it's the most important thing I've ever done in my life.
Wow, that's excellent. I can't wait to take a look at that. Is that going to be out in all stores or just Christian bookstores?
No, that'll be out in all stores, and you can even order it. I have a website, ringofglory.com. If you can't find it in a store, you could order it off the website.
Well, excellent. Well, we just had Father James Mitchell on about 3 weeks ago, and he was telling the story about how he came into one of your shows and played the devil character. I guess you would say the devil character. I don't know that's exactly what you were going for, but something along those lines. And he said that he was shocked at the end of the night that he didn't have to take the one big bump, good triumphing over evil. So why did you make that decision not to make that happen?
Absolutely, because again, I believe, with Ring of Glory as well as mainstream wrestling, it's got to be based on reality. And I was always, that's a big thing for me. As a writer, you've got to base it on reality. You've got to make it as real as you possibly can. And the reality of the situation is, the devil runs this world. The devil is alive and well, and the devil is running rampant. And, that's why there was no question in my mind from the start that when we were done, with the Ring of Glory show, the devil was going to be up. The devil was going to be strong, and the devil was going to be controlling this world. And I think, when I kind of laid that out to Jim, I think he was a little surprised by that. But again, I don't believe in the cookie cutter, wrestling. The way wrestling is, he should have took the big bump at the end and, maybe gotten a noggin knocker and whatever. But reality of the situation is the devil stands tall on this planet and on this earth. And that's what I basically, wanted represented at the end of the show.
Well, in the Ring of Glory, you got a lot of superstars that obviously work with you. AJ Styles, Mike Sanders, Sonny Siaki, the list goes on and on. Do you ever find any
Mike Sanders is going to be very happy that you just referred to him as a superstar, but go ahead.
Do you ever find any of the wrestlers maybe are a little apprehensive to work with, a wrestling federation that is so heavily based around, Christianity?
Well, you know what? I find some wrestlers who are Christians, they're a little concerned if they feel like some of the other wrestlers on the show aren't Christians, and that's a question that people ask me a lot. The reality of the situation is, I've got about 20 people on my show, and the reality is you're not going to find 20 Christians in the wrestling business. That's just the truth, and that's just the nature of the business. So basically what I look for is people with good hearts and good human beings that I know that perhaps are just in the wrong place in their lives. And basically we use Ring of Glory as an instrument, for not only those people attending the show and watching the show, but we also, pray that God does his magic in the back, with the boys, on the show. So that's why, our arms are open to everybody from all walks of life. We all have baggage, man, and we all have thorns in our side. And, we just, for that one night, we just want to, we want to present the boys with a healthy, loving, spiritual atmosphere. And I think, whether they're saved or not, or whether they're Christians or not, that night, I can guarantee you is different than any other wrestling night in their lives, because there's there's just something different going on. And I know that the boys really feel that, and I think that's why they want to continue to keep coming back and doing the show.
Absolutely. Well, is the December 16th show going to be a Ring of Glory show?
Yeah, it's a Ring of Glory show. The name of the show is The Great Commission. I just about have it booked now. We just about got everybody in place. We're looking for a crowd of about 3,000 people. Rome's a big city. We're playing it at the Forum in Rome where WCW used to play, so it's a nice big building. And hopefully we'll have a good show, and I know we'll have a good show.
Is this going to be at all based off of Christianity or Christmas? I mean, since it's about the holiday season.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I really haven't sat down to write the show yet because there's so many things I need to do before that. So, that's a possibility. When I sit down and write it, whatever God's moving me to do at that time, that's what I'll do. But, as of this point, I just haven't even really thought about the nuts and bolts of the show because there's just so many details to take care of beforehand.
Well, we've heard a lot about, over the period of time that you've kind of had not like an off-again relationship within the wrestling business, Some days it's your passion, some days you may not feel like it's your passion. Do you feel more comfortable with your role, working with Ring of Glory? Do you feel like you're more in tune with it on a regular basis?
Yeah, there's no question. And again, if you're not a Christian, I understand that a lot of the things I say are very hard to understand, believe me, because I've only been a Christian for 2 years. And if somebody was saying the things that I'm saying now before I was saved, I would have thought that person was absolutely out of their minds. So, I understand that people don't understand, but I honestly believe I hate the wrestling business. I despise the wrestling business. I'm certain the wrestling business is run by the devil. There's nothing I like about the wrestling business. And Ring of Glory is not the wrestling business. Ring of Glory is the God business. And Ring of Glory represents everything that the wrestling business should be. So my experiences in Ring of Glory and putting on that type of a show is so far removed from what the wrestling business is that, it's just two completely different things. There isn't one thing about the traditional wrestling business that is the same as anything you'll find in Ring of Glory. They're two absolutely different animals.
Well, I'd like to know exactly what you find so despicable about the wrestling business.
I can take a guess. I could take a guess, and we can just look at all the people that we've lost and, why we lost them.
I don't think there's any guessing involved. I was in the wrestling business for 15 years. I was in, WWE locker rooms, WCW locker rooms, TNA locker rooms. I made my way through the business, and it is despicable. And unless you're in it, you don't understand that. When I was a kid and I was watching Chief J. Strongbow and Bruno Sammartino and the Valiant Brothers and Ernie Ladd and all my heroes, I would have never in my wildest dreams imagined the underbelly of the professional wrestling business. And the one thing you've really got to understand, which is the root of everything, okay, is that when the wrestling business, began, when the wrestling business originated, it was originated by promoters who set it up in a way for them to make all the money. How they went about doing that was signing athletes as independent contractors, okay? When you sign the athletes as independent contractors, what you're doing off the bat is you are pitting the wrestlers against each other. All of them are in competition against each other. It's every man for himself. It's dog eat dog, and it's do whatever you have to do to get to the top. And that's the nature of the business. That's why the business is built with paranoia, because the guys constantly have to have eyes in the back of their head. You cannot trust anybody. And again, it's not the individuals, but it's the nature of the beast, and they become a victim of their circumstances just in order to survive. And I always said it. I said it from the first day I was in the wrestling business. It's very difficult to be a nice guy and be able to exist in the wrestling business, because you can't be nice and make it. And that's a fact. And, you know, again, I wish it wasn't that way. I mean, I really wish it weren't, but the wrestling business is the same today as it was 50 years ago. The principles remain the same. They're still independent contractors. The boys are still competing against each other. They're still doing whatever they have to do to stab the next guy in the back. And again, they just become a product of their environment, and they can't help it. I couldn't help it.
Well, this is a pretty good segue. You know, we've heard a little bit about this thing called the fraternity that you've kind of tried to get, you know, kick-started. Why don't you explain to us a little bit about the premise behind that?
You know, again, basically you have so many young guys, I mean talented guys trying to break into the wrestling business that have no idea what they're getting into. And the first thing that happens is a contract is put in front of them, okay? They're not lawyers, they're not sports agents, they're not entertainment agents, and they can't really understand what they're giving away in that contract. And so many of these guys are so thrilled, you know, to have a wrestling contract for $50,000 or $70,000, and also there's a little pressuring, you know, by the promotion for, you know, these individuals to sign the contract on the spot. Don't worry about having a lawyer look at it. It's standard. It's this. It's that. And so many of these guys, you know, sign their life away without realizing what they're getting into. And then what happens is 6 months down the line, they're absolutely miserable, and they're bound and stuck to a contract because there were some things in the contract that they didn't really understand what they were signing. And what we're trying to provide with the fraternity is, you know, look, if you need a lawyer, if you need an agent, if you need somebody to handle your finances, if you need an accountant, if you need drug counseling, if you need marriage counseling, if you need any of these things, you can come to us. We will find out where you live. We will find the best people in those areas, and we will find professionals to help you, because nobody should be pressured into signing a contract because they're afraid if they don't sign it today, it won't be on the table tomorrow. And again, that is the underbelly of the wrestling business. The same practices that went on 50 years ago are still going on today.
Let me ask you this. This seems like it's the closest thing to the U word that we've ever seen in the wrestling business.
There's no question about it. And again, the reason why the boys don't start a union is they're scared to death of their spot. And again, that's because of years and years and years and years having these things instilled in their minds. If you cause trouble, you're going to lose your spot. If you don't do what the office says, you're going to be blackballed. I mean, it's archaic. What happens in the wrestling business, and I mean, you look at professional sports, and that's really what wrestling is. And I mean, I couldn't even imagine the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball, you know, being conducted the same way professional wrestling is. I mean, professional wrestling, the business end of it, and the way the boys are handled and the way the boys are treated is an absolute travesty. And the promoters know it, and they take 100% full advantage of everybody on their roster. That's what they do.
I want to take this point and go two directions with it. The first one being creating some type of a union or fraternity, you know, that's out there for wrestlers to you know, better themselves if they need to or need any help.
The word is really protect.
Protect, okay.
Yes, yeah.
I want to ask you this. What you just described to us kind of sounds like a phenomenal idea in theory. Do you really believe that, let's say, we got someone from WWE, no one in particular names, decides I could use that service, and people within the WWE were to find out that would be safe from, I don't want to say prosecution, but like you said, losing their spot?
I'll tell you what, if they did lose their spot, they'd have one heck of a lawsuit. I'll tell you that right now. There is no question about it that they could provide the proof of why they lost their spot, and that is all it's going to take. I'm telling you right now, it's going to take one individual with a set of what, which I can and won't say, but it will take one individual to make a stand and step forward and change the way business is being conducted from here on in. And if one person doesn't do it, then the promoters will continue for the next 10, 20, 30 years to take advantage of the boys. It will never change.
The other direction I wanted to head with this was, when you were sitting there describing, these people signing these ironclad contracts, getting it over their head, being miserable, the first person whose name popped in my head was Brock Lesnar. This was a young guy that didn't maybe know a lot about the wrestling business, got involved, and next thing you know, he's essentially, unable to work for the next 10 years of his life. Is that kind of the idea of this?
There are 100 Brock Lesnars out there. Believe me, there are 100 of them out there that, again, the boys are so excited to sign the wrestling contract. Especially with WWE and TNA, the only two games in town. They're so excited, and believe me, the pressure is there that either you sign this contract today or it won't be on the table tomorrow. I've seen it. I saw it I basically just saw it 2 weeks ago. Okay, I constantly see it, and basically again, the boys not knowing any better and really afraid that the contract won't be there the next day, wind up signing their lives away. And to me, I don't blame the boys because they don't know any better, but the office and the promoters, they know exactly what they're doing. And as I said, it's going to take one guy to make a stand, or it's going to take a core group of guys to make a stand together to get that changed.
It seems like with this current state in the wrestling business being, really only one major game in town and one up and coming, that this, whole epidemic, is kind of what it sounds like. It's kind of at an all-time high.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when Vince bought WCW, his whole business dealings were, where else are they going to go?
Yeah.
He could have cared less if, I was hearing at one point that, major superstars were going out there working about 300, 325 dates a year and making $75,000. When you think about what these guys are doing in the ring, and every time they step into that ring, they can break their neck and never work again. When you think about that, for $75,000, no one human being should ever take advantage of another human being that way. That's got nothing to do with Christianity. That's got to do with being a human being. And no one person should take advantage of another person that way just because there's no place else to go.
You look at the NHL, they're protesting as they want more money, and they make exponentially more money than the wrestlers do.
Absolutely. It's, again, for compared to the other professional sports, it's a joke. It's like professional wrestling is backyard wrestling, on the business level compared to major sports.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this question. This is kind of a tough one, but how do you answer the critics who still are out there, still are on your case, saying, Vince Russo is just using this for the money?
It's just, I really even hate answering that because I really don't feel I have to, but it's, the one thing that boggles my mind is, and I've said this many, many times, when I left TNA, when I gave TNA my notice and told them, last November, I was done, okay? I walked away from TNA because I became a Christian, and I knew there were other things God wanted me to do, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I walked away from $2,000 a week working 1 day a week. I was getting $100,000 to work 1 day a week. I quit. I walked away. I left it. I had a store in Marietta, Georgia, where I lived. I closed my store down July 31st, closed it down, and haven't received a paycheck since July 31st because I know Ring of Glory is what God wants me to do. So it's like, my question is, if I'm doing it for the money, where's the money? I mean, but seriously, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm putting together now a show for December 16th. I've got 20 guys on the roster. Okay, these guys are being paid out of my pocket. I mean, I'm paying for these guys again because I know this is my calling and this is what God wants me to do. So it's like, if I'm doing this for the money, I don't know where the money is.
Right.
Where's the money?
Yeah, I mean, I always get a little bit anxious or nauseous, I should say, when I read things like that about Sting and about yourself and about Shawn Michaels. I mean, back off.
Like I said, do you know of anybody that left a job making $100,000? I mean, I could have skated by and continued to make that money at TNA. I mean, for as long as they're in business, if that's what I chose to do. But the money didn't mean anything because, God was really weighing heavy on my heart. Vince, this is what I need you to do. And I mean, I just listened and I literally walked away from everything in order to make Ring of Glory a reality.
It seems like TNA is really viewed in the light, though, that is far more positive in the wrestling business than, say, the WWE. Is that a fair assessment of the two, or are they both, like, equally as, kind of dysfunctional?
Are you asking me my opinion?
Yes.
My opinion is they're both equally dysfunctional. I mean, and there are people I really, really like at TNA. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and badmouth anybody, any individual or anything. But the reality of it is, the wrestling business is the wrestling business. And as long as there are wrestlers in key spots in any wrestling company, all those things I just talked about, they're not going to go away. They're going to be prevalent and they're going to exist. And in the experience I had, TNA was no different than the WWE. If it were, I wouldn't have left. But the bottom line was, it was the wrestling business. It was no different than my experiences with Vince.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this question, and I hate to go back to the old days, and I know you hate going back to them too, but we had Hulk Hogan on the show.
Right.
Back in August, I believe it was. It was just a couple weeks after you posted on ringofglory.com your coming out with the whole story of what really happened.
Right.
And what Hogan really said was, I read it. Some of what he said was true. Some of it wasn't true. And he said that, he didn't want to get into it in great detail because apparently there's still a lawsuit pending. I don't know if that's true or not.
Let me just stop you right there because I am a Christian, okay? And I don't lie, okay? Everything I said and everything I wrote was the absolute truth. If between now and then, Hulk Hogan convinced himself otherwise, or maybe Hulk Hogan forgot the details. I mean, whatever the case may be, what I wrote was the absolute God-honest truth as a Christian man. That was the truth. That was the way it went down. And as far as lawsuits still pending, Hulk Hogan's lawsuit against me for defamation of character was thrown out by two different judges. It was thrown out once. He appealed it. It was thrown out a second time. And I have no reason to lie about what happened that day. I know what happened. Hulk Hogan knows what happened. God knows what happened. And that's why, I sit here, an innocent man, never found guilty of anything, because here's the thing with the whole Hulk Hogan lawsuit. Okay, here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If it were real, and it were a shoot, and I really meant those things about Hulk Hogan, okay, and it wasn't a wrestling promo, okay, if it were real, and I really meant those things, why wasn't I on every wrestling talk show, the Wrestling Observer, or Wade Keller's show, or OneWrestling.com, or this show? Why wasn't I on any radio show saying anything negative about Hulk Hogan?
Well,
I never was, because I didn't have any negative feelings to Hulk Hogan. Nothing. It was all a work. It was all scripted. He knew I was going to go out and cut a promo. And that's why, when in trying to prove their case, he couldn't turn around and say, well, it wasn't a wrestling promo because he said this about me here, and he said this about me there, and then he went on Dave Meltzer's show and said this about me, and then he went on WCW Live and said, I never, ever, ever said anything negatively, publicly, about Hulk Hogan, because I never had anything negative to say about him.
wow.
And again, maybe he's forgotten some of the details, or maybe he's convinced himself that some of the things aren't true. But again, 2 judges threw it out. I have absolutely no reason to lie, especially being a Christian. It is what it is. That's the way it went down. And, there's really nothing else I can say. There are a million not a million, but there are a lot of instances in the wrestling business where I was wrong, where I treated people or maybe saying the wrong thing. There are instances where I wish I could take some things back. And in my book, I am more critical on myself than anybody else in the entire book. I'm more critical on myself. But in that instance, there's nothing for me to take back, because every single thing I did, he knew I was going to do. What happened is, and the fact of the matter is, Hulk went home, okay? He went on the Internet. He saw on the Internet that everybody bought into it. Everybody believed it was a shoot. Everybody was saying, oh, Vince Russo said to Hulk Hogan what somebody should have said to him 10 years ago. So now all of a sudden Hulk's sitting home, and it looks like Vince Russo got one over on him. And what happened? His ego was bruised. And next thing I know, I'm getting sued for defamation of character over an interview and a wrestling promo in a wrestling ring that he knew I was going to cut.
Wow.
I mean, come on. Like I said, being a Christian and being a man of God, as securely as I sit here, if I had something to apologize for that night, I would apologize right here, right now. But if anything, I've put Hulk Hogan over 1,000,000 times, stating if it was not for that man and the doors that he opened, Vince Russo would have never had the experiences and would have never been able to, monetarily make a living off of the wrestling business like I did. All of that was because of Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan doesn't even know this, but when my son was about 5 years old, I stood in a line for 2 hours for my son to get Hulk Hogan's autograph.
Wow.
Okay? I mean, 2 hours I stood in a line. Every time I worked with that man, I treated him with nothing with respect but respect, because of what he did to the wrestling business and paving the way for me and everybody else. I don't know what else to say to the guy. I've said a million times, I would work with him tomorrow. I do not have a hateful bone in my entire body for this guy.
Right.
But, you know, if he wants me to apologize for something that I didn't do, I can't do that because there's nothing I'm guilty of.
Well, you mentioned that, you know, you've been critical of yourself. And, you know, that's a term that we hear a lot in the wrestling business, is people being kind of overly critical. We had a kind of candid discussion about this the other day. Why, you know, I don't know if it goes back, in your opinion, to what you were saying about, you know, people trying to preserve their spots or do what's best for them. But out of every other medium I've been involved in, you know, television, radio, whatever the case may be, nothing's ever really been as critical as this business in particular is. Is that, do you think, a direct result because of, you know, the way the wrestlers are booked and sign contracts and are used?
Yeah, it's the business, bro. I mean, that's why I was so careful. I was so careful in my book not to speak negatively about anybody, because every wrestling book I pick up, with the exception of a couple, you know,
right,
probably like, you know, The Rock's and Mick Foley's, but every wrestling book I pick up, it serves two purposes. Number one, to get the guy who wrote it over, and number two, to bury everybody else. That's every wrestling book you'll ever read. And you know what? I promise God, you know, my book would not be that way, because I wanted my book to glorify, you know, God, what he did in my life. But, you know, bro, that's the business. I mean, that's the underbelly that I'm talking about. That's the day in, the day out that I'm talking about. It's the business, and again, that's a huge part of why now I'm doing what I'm doing. You've got to understand, I always knew there were a lot of bad things about the wrestling business. But when I became a Christian and now I was looking at it through a different set of eyes, those negatives became magnified 100 times over. And I just could no longer be a part of that world.
Well,
and you know, again, it is what it is. You see it, you know.
Yeah.
Well, we had, as we mentioned, Shawn Michaels on the program earlier this morning. Actually, we recorded an interview with him. We talked a little bit about it. Is it really possible to, you know, be saved, be born again,
and still stay in the realm of the wrestling business?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I can't speak for those guys. I mean, because again, we all have our Christian walks, and you know, it's different for everybody. But all I could tell you from my experience is I couldn't. I mean, I really tried. I mean, after I was saved, I stayed with TNA for a while, and what I was saying was, you know what, maybe God wants me to be here to minister to the younger talent. Maybe God wants me to be here to try to make a difference, to try and change it. But, you know, as the weeks went past, the negativity so outweighed the positiveness that I could no longer exist in that environment. But again, you know, that's me. I mean, how Sean and how Ted, you know, how they deal with it and how they cope with it, you know, I mean, I can't answer that for them. But, I mean, me personally, I couldn't do it. And that's why, you know, finally I gave my notice and I walked away.
I'm going to be upfront and honest with you here. I'm a little, not necessarily skeptical of everyone's views, but I get a little skeptical at times when I hear people, and as you said, you know, you can't speak for them, but like, you know, a Ted DiBiase say, you know, I've turned over to St. Leaf, I would never do this, and this again. And then within a few months, he's, you know, on the same TV he buried and swore he would never go to again.
You want to know something? And I'm being honest with you, because I hear you. I mean, I really hear you. Being a Christian, okay, man, you're walking such a fine line, because once you say you're saved, first of all, you got to understand, and you guys know this because this is what you do, but the mentality in the wrestling business, not only for the boys but also for the fans, is everything's a work. Everything's a work. Everything's a work. So Vince Russo saying he's saved, That's a work. He's full of baloney. Vince will be back in a month. Vince will be back in 3 months. Vince will be back in 6 months, whatever. But the reality is everyone is looking for you to fall flat on your face.
Well, saying everything will work, I mean, it's a great way to justify anything that's done.
Absolutely. I hear you. But, I mean, especially being a Christian, everyone is looking for you to fall on your face because they just can't wait to give you the old, I told you so. And, like, in a case like Ted, again, if you make that decision to go back into that world, yeah, man, I mean, that's the first thing that people are going to jump all over. And that's why, I've been away from it for a year now, and, I have to stay away from it because of my convictions and because of where I am in my life right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, because, like, I've even had these conversations, like with Jeff. I wrote my book, Forgiven, and the book is so important to me because in reading it, you will really understand what God can do in somebody's life. So in order for me to get the message out to the people, I need to get that book in as many hands as possible. I swear to you, when I tell you, I don't even know what the percentage is of books I sell. I don't even know because I don't care. But I do know I want to get that message in as many hands as possible. So, like, I even met with Jeff Jarrett a couple of weeks ago, and I said, Jeff, my book's coming out. I said, if there is any way I would be able to promote my book on your show, in order to get it in the hands of as many people as possible, I would be open to doing that. But again, bro, that would depend greatly on the storyline, what's happening in TNA, how they want to play the thing out. I mean, all of that would depend on whether or not I would make the decision to go and do it. I mean, I wouldn't just agree to do anything for the sake of selling the book. It's really got to be right. So again, man, it's that very, very, very fine line that you're walking.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not necessarily a religious person myself, but I hear kind of a difference talking to you about how you feel, how you carry yourself, the way you speak. If it's such a positive change, why do you think so many people are so apprehensive and judgmental about Christianity itself?
Because they don't understand it. Because, bro, I was the guy 2 years ago, okay, that to me, what Christianity was for weak people. Christianity was for, it was for people that had totally given up and have no place else to turn. That's what it was to me. You could never, ever talk to me about God without me looking at you and saying, yeah, okay, nice talking to you, see you later. I got more important things I got to do. I would have blown the person off in a heartbeat. I didn't want to hear it. And that's it. People didn't understand it like I didn't understand it. And again, bro, it's like until it happens to you and until you go through it and until there is a 100% life change. People can talk to you about it until they're blue in the face. Until God comes calling himself, you just will never, ever, ever understand it, just like I did.
Well, let me ask you this.
Experience that set it up for you, that made that, 180-degree turn. Was there a specific...
Oh, absolutely. And it's where my book starts. And basically what happened to me is Jeff Jarrett was probably my best friend in the wrestling business. And there are no friends in the wrestling business. I always made it a point to not get close to the talent. There are no friends. Everybody uses everybody, regardless of what anybody tells you. But Jeff was a true friend, okay? And I had a relationship with him. I had a relationship with his family. I had a relationship with his kids, the whole 9 yards. Well, what happened was a situation happened, and it regarded Hulk Hogan, okay, where Jeff basically sent me home, okay, well, I was a part of TNA at the time,
Right.
sent me home, continued to pay me, but sent me to home so he could bring Hulk Hogan on the show.
That was Bound for Glory originally.
Whatever it was, because Hulk wouldn't come if I was there.
Wow.
Okay? Now, bro, you've got to understand, and if you read, what I wrote on Ring of Glory, you'll understand it, but a lot of what went down at Bash at the Beach, a lot of it went down because I was sticking up for my friend Jeff Jarrett. And I was sticking up for Jeff because, I was trying to do the right thing, okay? I was trying to do the right thing for a friend. And basically, when he hit me with, we need you to go home so we could bring Hulk Hogan in, and he could have cared less about our friendship, and he put business in front of our friendship, in my heart of hearts, I grew such a hatred for Jeff. And I literally could feel my insides, and I could feel my heart turning black. I mean, I hated Jeff more than any person could hate anybody else. I mean, I hated him. And when I reached that point, and I was becoming a person that, I didn't like, and I mean, I reached a level of hate that I didn't even think I was ever capable of. When I got to that point in my life, that's when I got the wake-up call. And that's when I heard, God say to me loud and clear, look at what you've become. Look at what this business has done to you. And basically, from at that moment, okay, every ounce of hatred I had for Jeff just lifted off my shoulders. It was absolutely gone. And I mean, that was the turning point, right there. And from that day forward, I mean, everything just changed.
Well, let me ask you this question. You have a new talk show out, I believe it's every Thursday, is that the truth?
Yeah, every Thursday at 9 o'clock, yes.
Yes, you're doing a show, and it's clear to me that you can obviously handle talking for an hour, but what is your show going to discuss about? What?
It's tough talking for an hour without talking to somebody.
Yeah. You need somebody posing questions, right?
Basically, it's going to be about Christianity, but a lot of it is going to be about wrestling, too, because the two work hand in hand. I mean, I'm telling you, it's not coincidence that so many people in the wrestling business are being saved. I just spent so much time with Lex Luger for the last week, who has found God, who is a totally, totally different person. It's not a coincidence. There's a reason why this is happening. And, therefore, the show talks about Christianity. The show talks a lot about wrestling because I think a lot of it goes hand in hand.
Right, plus you can probably reach a broader audience with the wrestling talk that might be interested in learning about Christianity.
Absolutely. I mean, whatever it is that's going to pique their interest about Christianity, I mean, I'm all for it.
Well, let me ask you this one last question, and again, we're going to go back in time a little bit, and this is kind of me marking out and going back to 1999. Okay? I interviewed you. I had a British partner at the time. You might remember it. I don't know. About 2 years ago, maybe it was a year ago. I don't know exactly when it was. And we were discussing your WCW run, and you mentioned, I believe your exact quote was that the NWO angle would have been good. And for some reason, everybody that I talked about that with seemed to have a different idea of where it might have gone. Could you give me just a little bit of insight on where you were going to go with it?
Oh, boy, bro, it's
been so long ago?
Yeah, not only has it been so long ago, but here's the thing that I think would have made it interesting. You got to remember, Brett was the focal point of it.
Yep.
I mean, and here's the thing that I think would have made it interesting. You had such diverse personalities in the group. You had superstars in the group. I mean, guys at their peak in the group. I think it was Kevin. I think Scott might have been in there, too. I don't know.
I think he was there, and Scott Steiner was there. I think Scott Hall was there, but he was going through his on and off problems.
I think it was primarily Jeff, Scott, Kevin, and Brett, okay?
Right.
But the bottom line is, with those personalities and the investment and time that was put into those personalities over the years, the storylines between the people in the group and the conversations between the people in the group, who was going to trust who was going to screw who was going to side with who. There were so many ways to go with it because the players had been established in the wrestling business for so long. Now, again, you've got to understand something. I take great pride in being a writer. So I know with that talent and that talent being established to the point that they were, I know it would have made for some very, very, very interesting, stories and some very interpersonal, relationships between the group. And I was really looking forward to sinking my teeth into that. But again, unfortunately, right on the heels of that, Brett got hurt and he got the concussion, and we just never got a chance to do it,
Yeah, I remember looking back and thinking that was great TV, and we even saw a little bit of what you were saying about how they'd intertwined, because I think Brett's official last match was against Kevin Nash, a fellow member of the NWO.
I think so, too. But again, that's what I was looking forward to. I would love to see the relationship between Scott Steiner and Bret Hart, or, Bret Hart and Kevin Nash. There were so many stories to be told, and that's the kind of TV I thrived on. I thrived on the compelling stories and the characters, and that's really what it's lacking today. Those things today are just non-existent.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can't thank you enough for your time. You want to plug your book just one more time and give us an insight of what we can expect from it?
Well, again, you said, I didn't even know this, but thanks for telling me. Hopefully it'll be in bookstores by the beginning of December. I know it's done and published and bound. They received it today. And again, just the transformation of one person's life. You'll see it happen, within the very, very, very pages of the book. And also, my website is up, ringofglory.com, and on the website you'll be seeing updates, daily of the show coming up in Rome, Georgia on December 16th, the Great Commission. And, people in the Atlanta area, I hope you can, check it out. I'd love to have you there.
All right, well, I'm going to give you a web address right here so you can see the press release. They email that to everybody. And we're kind of I'm going to clip this a little bit when we air it on the internet, on the radio program.
Okay.
But I want you to check this out. Check out Wrestling Epicenter. I'm about to post it right now. They sent me a press release where it says that it's going to be out in early December. So hopefully that is the case, because I'm looking forward to reading it. It looks like a really different kind of book. I read Ric Flair's book, and it just seemed like such childish stuff to me. Some of the shots that he took, and it just seems idiocy to me.
Yeah, a lot of the book too is my background. That's a big part of my life. It's not all wrestling. The thing I like about it is I really talk about my background because I really want people to understand, what molded me into the type of person I was, and I really want people to understand the type of human being I was when I was in that fire at the WWE, and why, a lot of things that happened were just very, very difficult for me to cope with, just being the person that I was. And that's why there's a history, so you'll really get to understand the person that I was.
Okay, Chuck, you still with us?
I'm with us, man.
All right, you want to sign us out?
Oh, we're good to go, man. We'll go right now.
All right, well, thank you so much for everything that you, every minute you spent with us. We really appreciate it. It's clear to me that you are, truly a changed person. I consider it an honor to have spent the past, hour or so talking to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, guys, and if I can help you with anything in the future, just let me know.
Of the rest of the wrestling world. And, of course, guys, we'll be taking your thoughts later on in the hour. Phone systems are back online.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
It's a shame we couldn't do that with the Queen of Extreme, Francine. We hope to have her back on. We wish her the best of holidays and Merry Christmas. We'll see her next year here on the Wrestling Epicenter. But right now, I'd like to have a debate about some of the things that Mr. Russo had to say on the show. First of all, do you guys believe that wrestling is run by the devil?
Of course, the devil has money. His name is Vince McMahon. But you know what? That devil though, it's entertaining at least. And it's wrestling like any other entertainment aspect of the world is run by those who will eventually pull a lot of screw jobs in their life. If you're gonna be a nice guy, then go teach, go be a doctor, go be something worthwhile to society. If you want to make money and want to entertain people, you gotta be rude. You've got to be this. You have to be vile in order to succeed.
As Vince McMahon puts it, ruthless aggression.
Exactly. That's why he's successful. That's why he's still in business today, because you know what? He's gonna look out for number one, and that's Vince. Or same thing with Jeff Jarrett. He's not exactly. He might not even be the nicest guy. I mean, come on, he's had the title for the past. I don't even remember when he hasn't had the title.
I gotta be honest with you.
Okay.
I've dealt with Jeff Jarrett in the past. He actually is too nice of a guy. That's my honest opinion. I think Jeff Jarrett, while he holds people down, you can get the phone. Sorry about that. We're going to take a phone call right here. But the problem with Jeff Jarrett is TNA could be a lot bigger if he pushed people a little harder. If he said, listen, we got this great program. Oh, sorry about that. We got this great program on the air. We're offering it to you, these great stations. Put us on. Look how popular wrestling is. WWE Raw does a 4.4 rating. Fantastic. Put us on. We'll get you at least a 2.2. Nope, he doesn't do that. Instead, they're stuck on FSN at 3 in the afternoon like they were a year ago, and now they're on at here midnight because we're an hour behind everywhere else.
Vince Russo, mark my words, is clinically insane.
Well, most born-agains typically are.
This man has lost his mind. I can understand being a born-again Christian and doing everything you do for the Lord. I can understand that, and you know what? I can give you credit for that, and I'll give you your props. But Vince, after all you've done to mess up one company, and after all you did in another company where you actually had somebody controlling your ideas, you're insane.
Well,
I can't fathom how you came up with some of the stuff you did, but you did it, and it showed, and he followed one of the key mistakes that a lot of these bookers have made, and that is putting themselves in the limelight. Dusty Rhodes made it, Kevin Nash made it, and Vince Russo did it. The difference is he's not a wrestler.
Yeah, he's not exactly a wrestling material. He's not Shane McMahon who's willing to take bumps.
Right. Well, let's take one step back.
Okay.
You're talking about he killed a company, I believe, is what you just said a few seconds ago. Do you really believe he killed WCW?
No.
I believe he and Ed Ferreira. I mean, there were a series of bad business decisions there. There was a real, falling out with a lot of the stars. But
yes, there was. But let's take a step back, though. Vince Russo left the WWE in November of 1999, October, as a matter of fact, of 1999. He came on board to WCW, and in 1 month, ratings went from a 2.3 to a 3.5. In 1 month of Vince Russo programming. Now, granted, a lot of people had a problem with this program because it was a little bit more attitude than WCW was in the past, but it still had standards and practices which Ted Turner had in place at the time, and it was still family acceptable, just a little bit more edgy, and very, very storyline based. I think that run in Vince Russo's career was phenomenal. Now you're talking about how he put himself on TV, and that run he wasn't on TV. He was just the voice. You just saw his hand. He was like Steinbrenner in Seinfeld.
In Seinfeld.
Right. You just kind of saw his hands moving, you heard him talk, but you never saw the guy. His second run, when he came back with Bischoff on the April 10th Nitro, that was when Vince Russo started putting himself on TV and did what he swore for 15 years he never would do, and that's put himself over on TV.
And I guess that might have just been his ego finally coming into play that, why not? I mean, the company is still going good. How about this? Let me go on air. That's what he's probably was begging to do in the end. But, he did do a lot of things in his career. He was semi-responsible for the Attitude Era. He did a decent job at WCW, but, in the end, he just seems very, very just blown away, just beaten up by the entire thing.
He came out during that second run almost every night and complained about the backstage politics, and he kept trying to make it so things were a shoot or a work or you didn't know. The problem with Vince Russo was I hate to say this, I really do, but I think he was honestly a little bit ahead of his time. It was a great time to be a wrestling fan during the Monday Night War when he was in the thick of it. But then the former Vic Venom, Vince Russo.
I love that gimmick, by the way.
Vic Venom decides he's
that
going...
show, which I'm sorry to cut you off again, that show, which was Livewire, was ahead of its time. That was 1996, and it involved the internet, and it involved interaction with the audience on a WWE program on Saturday mornings. That was way before its time.
The internet was the worst thing that happened to Vince Russo, because in 1999 he naturally assumed that everyone had internet access and was constantly checking their emails or their favorite wrestlers' sites or their favorite, inside information
He
sites.
thought everybody and their brother was on PWInsider.com.
Well, wasn't everybody else doing that? Every other business during the whole .com boom was thinking that the internet was the one place to solve all the business problems. Really, he was going with the general consensus about that.
The problem was the average wrestling fan is not. I mean, I could pretty much say that 25 to 30% of wrestling fans are smart marks who do that. That is not your vast majority. Your vast majority likes unpredictability. Your vast majority likes actual wrestling by actual wrestlers.
Right.
They like to be entertained. They don't want to know what's going on. They don't want to know every facet of something. They don't care.
Right.
Yeah. They don't care how somebody is punched in the face and ends up not being bruised. They don't care about that. They just came to see a show, and a good show. It's a soap opera with big, muscular people who can beat each other down. And Russo didn't understand that.
What Russo did understand, though, was how to produce great storylines. He did phenomenal things in WCW the first run. Remember the NWO when he finally, after 2 years of him being with the company, gave Bret Hart a push? I mean, they finally did something with Bret Hart. They finally started doing Goldberg right after he lost a year before and lost a lot of his steam. He had things going right the first run. He had a plan to bring Hogan back. He had a plan to bring Flair back. He took them initially off TV because he thought they were a symbol of what WCW became, and that is two over-the-hill guys. He knew what he was doing the first run. The second run, I will agree with you.
He got cut in the act.
He got
caught up.
Well, the problem was he was reading the internet. He was reading the internet himself too much. And the problem with internet fans is they don't know what they want. Vince McMahon will tell you, the fans don't know what they want. I know what they want better than they do. And whether or not we agree with that on this show, I personally do, that is the attitude you have to have. Because if you let the internet run your show, they're still going to bitch regardless what you do. Now let's put that into context, okay? Everybody on the internet hated Hulk Hogan. They wanted him off TV. The bottom line was, though, at that time the internet was what, maybe 10% of the wrestling audience?
Less than that, maybe.
Right. Then you had 90% of the non-internet crowd that just loved the Hulkster. And they took him off TV, and they're like, okay, so what's our main eventers now? Booker T imitating The Rock against Jeff Jarrett.
And they saw that, and of course the ratings spoke for what the fans wanted. They wanted a tried and true superstar. Anyways, guys, we're taking a break right now in the Wrestling Epicenter. Up next, we'll be discussing SmackDown results.
Right here on the Blaze, 1260 AM. Stay tuned.
Yo, maniacs, this is Hulk Hogan, the greatest of all time, and you're listening to The Blaze, 1260 AM. So what you gonna do when Hulk Hogan in Blaze of Mania runs wild on you?
That's right, what you gonna do? Welcome back to the Wrestling Epicenter on the Blaze, 1260 AM. We're gonna do a quick hit of SmackDown results. Rey Mysterio defeating JBL and DQ. Batista and Rey Mysterio defeating JBL and Orlando Jordan. Your thoughts?
Which broke down. The first match broke down into the second match, is all I was going to say.
Yeah. And then the next match after that, Booker T defeating Chris Benoit, number 3 of the best of 7 series. 3-0. I mean, will he make a comeback?
3-0. It's going to be an interesting thing. If he loses, I think if he loses, there's a good possibility Chris Benoit might be done with the WWE.
Yeah, most likely, which is unfortunate.
Especially if he goes down 4-0.
See, I think doing this 3-0 thing really presents a level of drama. They're trying to make the match significant for pay-per-view, and they basically figure the only way they can really do that is to put somebody down in that big of an underdog position. I don't think you're going to see him get swept. I don't think he's going to win either.
Of course not. Probably go down in Game 7. Like
like
we predicted earlier. Super Crazy defeating Joey Mercury and the Boogeyman. Oh, your favorite character, the Boogeyman.
The Boogeyman is great for one reason.
Why?
He is just like... It's stupid. It's a terrible gimmick. We all know it's terrible. We all know it's incredibly moronic but you know what? It's the better part of the crowd enjoys it because he's hilarious.
He is hilarious, actually.
It is gone. I believe, James, you put it best. How did you put it?
I said it's crossed the line of stupidity and gone back to funny.
And I will give you the one reason that this gimmick will stay around.
What's that?
It's an
Shane McMahon came up with most of the stuff he's doing.
But still, at least entertaining, though, for the most part. And he defeated Ray Gordy. Good old Ray.
Local job or whatever.
Local jobber.
For the Boogeyman, real quick, just want to point this out. Everyone, at least on the inside, knows who the Boogeyman is.
Right.
And knows his significance. This is the guy, Marty Wright.
Right.
Who is paying his dues. He was in the $1 Million Tough Enough, and he was chronicled for the fact that he lied about his age.
Right. He's actually 40 years old,
He was in better, 40. He said he was 30, which was the age limit. He's in better physical condition than the guys they had there. He was a standout, but he lied. They, of course, knowing WWE and Vince McMahon, let's give him a second chance. But is this the second chance he should get? I admit that the Boogeyman is a stupid character, but come fighting a guy like, say, one of the big predictions right now is that he'll fight The Undertaker at, WrestleMania.
Right.
Can you go on with this guy once he loses a match? And it's pretty much preordained he will. I don't think The Undertaker's given that one up.
I don't think. Why would you want to give up your undefeated streak to the Boogeyman?
Right. Think of all the great people he's beaten at WrestleMania, and the guy who finally beats that 15-0 streak or 14-0 streak.
I believe it's 13. 13. Randy Orton was 13, I believe.
All right. Well, the guy who beats that would be some character like the Boogeyman. Now, I agree with you. The Boogeyman is a fantastic character. Remember when they were in San Francisco and they panned to the Boogeyman and he starts singing "I Lost My Heart in San Francisco." How great was that? It's funny.
It's hilarious. It's entertaining. It's probably one of the bright spots in the WWE product, even though it is kind of moronic. And finally, Lashley defeating Mr. William Regal, proper English boy.
Bobby Lashley, once again, it's like they're just trying to write off the mistake they made at Survivor Series on not giving this guy. I have to agree with you. I watched Survivor Series again. I looked at the way that they presented Lashley, and while he was dominant, he didn't do anything significant, and he was knocked out by an outside chokeslam. I mean, he wasn't even given the dignity of being knocked out by someone in the ring.
Right.
And therefore, they've kind of just written it off, played it off like it never happened.
Right.
And they've given Lashley a lot of time
to do that.
It's a good idea to pretend it never happened. The problem is, though, they keep talking about how well he did at Survivor Series. And I don't remember him doing that well at Survivor Series, but they keep talking about it.
He didn't do well. And right now, since this is our last show of the semester, Ben, what do you want for Christmas?
SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 for the PlayStation 2 or PSP.
Well, you know what? You can ask your mom for that, because I'm definitely not buying you that.
Well, there's a big reason for it. It is a video game.
Right.
But, of course, it's WWE, and it is THQ's master creation.
Right.
Many wrestling fans who play the games understand that probably the best of all of these games, other than, say, SmackDown 2 or Here Comes the Pain.
Hold on. Let me take a guess. No Mercy for the N64.
Without a doubt. No Mercy was one of the finest wrestling games ever made.
Absolutely.
And therefore, THQ said to themselves, I think we have to capitalize on this, so we're going to capitalize on this. You know what they came up with?
What's that?
Instead of having a health meter, which they've always learned is a dead spot. Can't have health meters anymore because they're just silly. It's making it a fighting game. They came up with the stamina meter again, something very familiar where if you build momentum, not stamina, if you build momentum, your character will get a special move. If you flip the right joystick or hit L1 and L2 on your PS2 controller, shoulder buttons, you're going to store his special. And you can get another one and steal another character's special or have a double or, super
counter
dirty,
special, etc.
counters. It's something that the N64 games did well, and it actually is more realistic. You don't see a guy just pull his finishing move out of nowhere. Usually he's on a roll.
What's his name's Goldberg?
Yeah. I mean, you look at guys like Shawn Michaels, who always have to get on a roll before hitting you with their special move.
Right.
Triple H has to do at least 3 or 4 signature moves in front of his. And, one of the chronic ones is John Cena, who has been built up to get on a roll and then hit his special. You're just waiting for it, and when he does it, it's key.
It makes sense to do that in a video game where it's a pop. It's something you earn, like a fan. It's something you earn when you're watching it as a live event. What I want, though, is a good game for Xbox 360, because every single wrestling game that's came out for the Xbox has been horrible.
Well, the only game that even stood a chance of being any good for the Xbox 360 was WrestleMania 21, which was a complete and total carbon copy of Day of Reckoning, with one key exception. No, not one key exception. There were a bunch of them. One of the biggest ones was that the gameplay was too much like a fighting game, repetitive moves, and it was really choppy, too. I mean, the gameplay itself, there were collision errors, there were just...
The online mode didn't work.
The online mode didn't work. I mean, it was poorly represented. Getting back to SmackDown vs. Raw 06, gameplay aside, which is huge, if THQ wants to capitalize on this for its other systems, like, say, the Xbox 360, the in-depth actual realism modes are great. You have the option to play 2 different years of a season, one on Raw or one on SmackDown,
Right.
both of which give you different options, different things you can do.
Which is good because I have Day of Reckoning 1, and I'm hoping to get Day of Reckoning 2 for the GameCube for Christmas. But going back, saying when you play Day of Reckoning 1, you're in the story mode, and you play as SmackDown, it's obvious that you were supposed to pick Raw because they still do Evolution, but it's just with different characters, like Kurt Angle subs in for Triple H.
It doesn't really make as much sense.
Right, absolutely.
The thing about the new game, SmackDown vs. Raw, it seems like no matter what character you pick, the person who you team up with or against or whoever is doing the sound clip, it is right. Something is right about it. The way it factions out, doesn't matter who you pick, it seems right. You know, you'll be fighting Triple H. It doesn't matter who you pick, as long as it's not one particular person, and I haven't confirmed this, but you'll be fighting Triple H, and who's going to come up to you to help you out because Triple H and Ric Flair are aligned together at this time, but Shelton Benjamin, and Shelton says, hey, I've got pinfall wins over him. It's realistic. Not to mention the fact that this game has gone all Madden this year with the new General Manager mode. Here is a mode that gives you a goal. Over 1 year period of time, there are 1 million fans, split 500,000 on Raw and SmackDown. You pick a brand. You can draft your rosters or keep the ones that you already have. I mean, beneficial thing. Everyone gets paid different amounts. You can pay them for certain amounts of time. And the whole point is week after week you want to put on the better show. Your wrestlers can get fatigued. If they're too fatigued and you keep wrestling them in high-profile matches, they get hurt. I
love
happen
the
to know
blood.
for a fact.
Wow.
How about the blood?
The
You
blood.
actually start bleeding, and if anybody saw WrestleMania 13 when Bret Hart had Steve Austin in the sharpshooter, he dragged him across the ring,
You see the blood
and
on
you
the
see
canvas.
the blood just drag across the mat.
One of his
And
better
in
matches.
this case, they do it too. It does disappear after a period of time, but if you knock your guy out with blood, you will see it drip onto the canvas, and it will stay there for a minute or two. It's one of those it's just one of those little cool effects. One of the biggest things THQ and future media producers Ukes worked on in this game was creating realistic entrances. One of the biggest criticisms of the previous games in any system was that the entrances that characters had were either not long enough or not accurate enough. In this game, Triple H's entrance, which takes roughly 2.5 minutes, will take 2.5 minutes of a cutscene for you to watch. Same with The Undertaker.
You can skip it, though, right?
Yeah, you can't
You can skip it at any time.
Thank
Right,
God.
good.
One of the big things, though, I think they missed on the entrances is that certain guys don't come out with what you'd expect them to come out with. I'm not sure if it's unlockable in the game somehow, but I've pretty much done what there is to do, and it doesn't seem like it is. Edge does not have coat, sunglasses, or a Money in the Bank briefcase when he comes to the ring,
Oh, that's sad.
which is just one of numerous examples of
But does
what
he have that cool new theme song?
he does.
That's weird.
They went all out paying for the music.
Good.
Finally.
They got everyone's theme song with the exception, I believe, of Stacy Keibler.
Who cares?
Who's going to play
Thanks.
Stacy Keibler on the game? I
Yeah.
really
Not.
I want to know.
Who cares?
No, not me.
And they also went all out this year. They've got a pretty accurate roster. I mean, barring the last set of roster cuts and guys like Tajiri and Christy Hemme, of course, who was on the game, leaving.
How about Joy Giovanni?
Yeah, there are a few glitches. She is a big one.
Yeah.
Joy Giovanni, Charlie
She's on there,
Haas
but
is on the
Victoria
game.
is not.
Victoria, yeah. There's just certain ones that are unmistakable. It seems like they really focused on the SmackDown divas this time around, which makes no sense if you're fighting for the women's title.
Yeah, because no one really does those anyways. I mean, that's just a woman, and sadly in those games are just basically cannon fodder.
Yeah, for the bra and panties match.
And speaking of championships, if you're not motivated by any other thing, you just want to win titles and defend them, they have reinitiated something that was on SmackDown 2. It was on No Mercy, and they got rid of it after a period of time. It was only available in limited form on the first PS2 SmackDown game, Just Bring It.
Smoking skull bolt.
It was you can create your own title belt and defend it, or this time you can actually just compete straight up for the belts that are available.
In exhibition mode?
In exhibition mode.
Yes.
Create,
that is
you can
cool.
compete in a title match against whoever you want, and if you save it to your profile in the game, it will keep a record of it, which is unusual considering my profile has Carlito successfully defending his Intercontinental title against The Rock in a last man standing match, and then losing it to Ric Flair in a steel cage.
Yet he still beats Shelton Benjamin no matter.
Yeah, of course. If I had Carlito fight Shelton Benjamin, he would win every time. That way it was really realistic.
That's ultra realistic there. Well, anyways, guys, that's going to be all the time we have for this
Just
show.
let me sign off appropriately here, guys.
Yes.
First of all, this is our last show for the semester, so I want to wish everybody a happy holidays and, of course, Merry Christmas. We'll see you here next year. I can't wait to be back.